I'd like to call this council meeting to order. Would you all please rise for the invocation?
We meet to serve our community and endeavor to be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Let us be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, so that in our deliberations we may display imagination, wisdom, and courage, and the will to do our work for the good of all.
Before I call for the roll call, I just want to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Mississaugas of the New Credit, and the Anishinaabe people. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, Your Worship, with the exception of Councillor Zanko.
So there is one addendum this evening. We have an additional delegation. That's Barbara Vanderheiden, Executive Director, and Jessica Trapani, Fundraising and Events Coordinator with Big Brothers, Big Sisters of South Niagara. Just a couple of announcements. The first has to do with the goings-on over the last day and a half or so with the high wind. And I want to express on my own behalf and on behalf of the members of council our appreciation for the work done by the volunteer firefighters, our Public Works Department, as well as the Niagara Parks Commission and the Niagara Regional Police. Just over the past, I guess, maybe 30 hours, in terms of the fire department, they responded to 14 arcing hydro wire calls, 1 structure fire in Ward 1, 1 grass fire in Ward 3, 4 public assistance calls for trees that were down or appendages of houses were causing disruption, 3 alarm activations, 4 medical assists, and many hours blocking roads and assisting the police with Canadian Niagara Power working through the call list with respect to disrupted electricity. Several visits were made to the Niagara Parkway to help clear people from the top of the shove ice piles. If you haven't been down near the Peace Bridge or Mather Arch, you won't know then that there was ice piled as high as 18 feet that had been pushed over the break wall there. And while it's an interesting sight to see, it's hard to believe, but the Parks Commission also was trying to keep people from walking onto the ice, which was still actually moving. So it's a very dangerous situation, and anyone who's listening or watching this evening, I would urge them to stay off of the ice. It's just not appropriate. The Public Works Department also responded to a tree that had fallen on a house on, that would be Bowen Road, that would be Ward 1. Also Walden Boulevard, that would be Ward 2. Tree had fallen onto a house deck and damaged a hydro pole. There was water over the road that they responded to in the Thunder Bay area in a couple of locations. Miscellaneous trees were leaning or had fallen over but hadn't had an impact on the road. We're not aware of any other property damage at this time. And the crews wrote clearing obstructions to sight lines and sidewalks. And finally, the Niagara Parks Commission put out a release recently indicating that they were requesting the public to exercise caution when traveling along the South Niagara Parkway, particularly in the area of Mather Arch. Traffic is being rerouted. The road is closed at the top end of Central Avenue near Mather Arch over to Queen Street. As a result of the high winds, large ice formations from Lake Erie have breached the parapet wall and have spilled onto the sidewalk along the South Niagara Parkway. These ice formations continue to move and shift, and members of the public are asked to please avoid this area. And given the impact of the high winds on the ice boom, there's significant ice that is now built up in the lower Niagara River basin. Any of you who are familiar with the Niagara River will know that even the river has risen about 3 feet yesterday evening, which was pretty surprising. I'm thankful to be living in a higher elevation area, but there was water that had risen to heights that I had not seen. So please exercise caution. There are no other, the other announcement, we received this week the first print newspaper in Fort Erie for some time, the Fort Erie Observer. It has been online. I want to congratulate and thank the people behind this, including the publisher, thank you, and the editor, Sarah Ferguson. The publisher is Marina Butler. It's really full of local news, and it's something that's missing, and every community really needs this type of publication to help bring people together, make sure that people are informed of what's happening in their own neighborhoods, and I congratulate and commend you with respect to this. So, that's it for the announcements. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? There being none, there are a couple of public meetings that are coming up. One is the Bay Beach operational changes meeting, which is scheduled for next Monday, March the 4th, at 6 p.m. here in the town hall, and we've been receiving some emails with respect to comments from people that aren't going to be available. And then we have a budget meeting Tuesday, March the 5th. That will be our 4th budget meeting, and we'll be dealing with the general levy operating budget and assessment analysis. If that isn't concluded that day, then we'll be going to March the 20th. All the budget meetings are here in the town hall at 6 p.m. And we will be dealing with the general levy and operating budget on March the 25th. And I think the completion of the capital budget authorizations as well on that evening. So that takes us then to the regional councillor report. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Reddecup. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Top drawer.
Good. This is your opportunity to inform us of anything you'd like to other than compliment us.
Thank you. I'm going to start off with the NPCA. The Conservation Authority governance and restructuring continues to progress at a steady pace. CAO Selection Committee will be meeting this week, I believe, to hire a professional firm to start the search for an administrative officer. It's anticipated by May that we will have someone in that capacity. And in the meantime, we are exploring other different avenues, whether it be a supervisor or a temporary interim CAO. That's still being looked at. The Governance Committee continues to address the many issues revolving around the policies and procedures of the NPCA. One of the first orders of business was to address the compensation that board members would be allowed to claim. Suffice it to say that a per diem now means per day, unlike past boards' interpretation. During Regional Council's budget meetings, it was requested that the NPCA look into the matter of an overpayment of a debt charge assessed to the region along with other special levies. A $1.6 million reduction has been found, and the money will be removed from the special levy charges assessed to the region. That has been done.
Well done.
At the last board meeting, we felt it prudent that a forensic audit, human resources audit, be initiated. The chair and the vice chair have been given authority to hire a professional firm to start this process. There were too many questionable events and use of funds that required further investigation. I believe I had mentioned it, brought it up, and pushed the matter of fact that I think if we were going to start fresh, then it needed to be done, and it was well overdue. Right now, for the interim board, it continues to make progress in writing a lot of the situation. It is the intention of this 12 interim board members representing the Niagara region that we are going to request another 3-month extension from Regional Council. I realize that at first it was 3 months, but what we're finding is that it's going to take us a little more time. And I think everybody was kind of hoping or something we would get to the bottom of everything and it can be done. My favorite topic, waste collection right now continues to be an issue here in Fort Erie and throughout the region. At the Public Works Committee I brought up the issue regarding the current contractor having difficulty fulfilling the contractual obligations. Region staff had requested to give them a little more time to deal with the matter. Know that at the next Public Works Committee, I will be formally requesting steps be taken to move to broaden towards a two-tier system, where property be, or contract be moved away, some of that contract be moved away so that Fort Erie is not left out. They will divide certain areas for a different contractor, as they have done with West Lincoln and Lincoln. I believe it's only fair, and I am pushing for that. The director of MTERA's operations is scheduled to address the Public Works Committee next month, and I will have certain questions. If anyone has any questions they'd like to bring forward, please let me know. With regards to affordable housing, letters have all been sent out to the mayors along with respective CAOs, asking to meet with myself along with the director of the Niagara Regional Housing and one other board member. It is the belief of Niagara Regional Housing that if there were enough property available for development, then the process of supplying affordable housing would progress at a much faster rate. A list of developers is being put together and who are ready and able to start construction. It is the intention of myself, along with the others, to develop a land inventory that we can move forward to address the affordable housing crisis that we find ourselves. I am looking forward to meeting with Councillor Butler to see if we can assist each other. With regards to an issue that was raised at our last meeting that I attended, with regards to the NPCF Foundation. Currently, there is actually one person who is you want to call it acting board member. All other board members have gone. The situation right now with the foundation is that it's in a state where I believe the NPCA will have to help out. There is no major dollars that are available to anybody. The issue is that because it is floundering a bit, and the fact that previous CAOs withdrew money to the person to support a full-time person to actually go out and seek programs, solicit for funds, there's no more money there for that person to do their job. So that will have to be addressed by the board. Currently, there is one person there. There is one former board member who is getting ready to pass the torch because they've had their fill. Other than that, there is money in a trust fund. That trust fund was put forward by people from Fort Erie. It was an auxiliary group that put the money forward to go to education bursaries.
Scholarships, yeah.
Yes. That is tightly controlled. That's really the only amount of money that's there. The only other funding that they get right now, I believe, is through break tickets, full tab ones. Other than that, as you can well imagine, being associated with the NPCA, fundraising would be a bit difficult, to say the least. All that to say, and we will be bringing that up at our next meeting to actually how we're going to address that. So if there's any questions, thank you for letting me.
Thank you very much, Regional Councillor Encina. Are there any questions of the member, Councillor Dubineau, then Councillor Noyes?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much, Councillor Encina, for your presentation and especially the work you're doing on the waste front, because it's something I hear about all the time, and I'm sure you're going to have your work cut out for you with the next couple of days with traffic lights and stuff from the wind. I think that goes without saying. I've heard about them too. One quick question for you. perhaps you might have this information regarding the MPCF. You had mentioned that there's one acting board member right now. Do you happen to know who that one acting board member is?
I believe it's Mr. Beatty. And actually, from what I have been advised, he's just there sort of helping the person who has been employed to actually pull things together, as in tie up the budgets, tie up different things like that, so that it can be handed off.
Thank you. And so you're confirming then that the other board members who were there have left, and it's just Mr. Beatty who's the only one remaining, correct?
There online there were two. When I made some phone calls and addressed that was my concern, and I was told quite to the point that I went as high as I could go, and I was confirmed that was the issue that was done.
Councillor Dubineau?
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate you getting that information and clearing that up, and I'm good. Thank you.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Encinia, for your presentation. Two questions. The traffic lights at Netherby and Stevensville. I've had a few calls what the timeline is. I know it's a regional issue, and I keep telling them that. But again, we're very eager to see them going. I don't know if there's a timeline. What
Calls have been made, and I was advised that it is being worked on. Okay. I'm.
You don't know me well, but this question will come up frequently until they're done. And to that end, last time I talked to you about the lagoon,
Yes.
the work that was being done on the lagoon, and you were going to forward me the information once you've received it. So I'm assuming you did not yet receive the information?
I have received it. I will be sending you an email because what they've actually done, the tenders have gone out. That's all completed now. What they did do is they actually waited for the breakdown of actually what they're actually going to do there. I now have that with intake and outtake and some water supplies and things like that. And I will send that to you and along with everybody on council.
Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Is that work scheduled for this year or next?
It's scheduled for this year. I'll budget money for this year.
Right. Any other councillors? Thank you very much, Mr. Encina. Sorry, Regional Councillor Encina. Okay. That takes us to presentations and delegations, and the first delegation is Chris McQueen with respect to the town's strategic plan. Good evening, Mr. McQueen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Redekop and members of council, for the opportunity to be here and give you a brief update on the progress of your strategic plan. Is this the... Perfect, thank you. So first I'll just introduce myself for the viewing members. My name is Chris McQueen. I'm a strategy consultant with a company called Disruptive Ideology. I've been engaged by the town to be the consultant to move forward and develop your strategic plan. So we have met once with council very briefly, got some early input, and so I'll go through and just provide a bit of a recap of where we were and what's planned in the go forward as we move forward through the plan. So just quickly for tonight, and I'll try to be as brief as possible, I'll just give a quick recap for just to bring us to where we're at today. The strategic plan, we talked about options for some additional input. It was the wish of council to go out and do some broader public consultation. So we've revised that plan, which was drafted initially. We've included some additional public consultation. I'll talk a bit more about that. The timing is good tonight because the public consultation is now active with 3 community surveys that have been launched. And so that information I had emailed just before the meeting. So you have that information ready to send out in case you wanted to look at it as we go through. The plan's been revised slightly, not significantly, to have incorporated the additional public input. And then I'll talk a little bit about more about the surveys and some of the information and details that members of the public would like to know. And I'll talk a little bit about our communications plan to push the surveys out to increase participation. So initially we started out with a phase called an environmental scan. What this was a bit of data collection just to look at the current state, how are we doing as a town, looking at some data points and some information, a sort of Fort Erie by the numbers. That was sort of the start, just to kind of get a sense of some of the baseline information about how you were doing today and what Fort Erie's story was by some reliable community indicators, and to get some input from the council as well. That work is nearly completed, and it will provide council with a pretty good snapshot of where things are at today, to be able to look back on that as you're doing progress reporting moving forward. The second phase was pre-consultation, which was about going out to community agencies and partners and businesses to get some input. From the last meeting, it was the wish of council to incorporate more of the public consultation in that phase as well. So I've got a revised slide. So we've moved phase 4 forward, and then all of that will provide input to council for a series of probably 3 workshops where we'll take the input from the environmental scan, the input from community surveys from the public, businesses, and your community partners, and lastly, the input you've collected through a fairly extensive public consultation as you knocked on doors and campaigned a number of months ago. So all that will form input into the discussions for your strategic plan moving forward. So really what the goal of all of this is to look at those sort of 3 concentric circles to see what it is that council sees as priorities moving forward, the senior management team in the course of building business plans and helping to support budget, resources, and capacity, and now a bigger circle, which is going out to the community and getting input from those 3 groups will help to form those questions. So if you recall from the first meeting of council, 2 questions around what residents identified during your campaign, and the other one was what was the most important issues the town should focus on. Those have been collected. I still have them. I haven't shared them back yet, mostly to not bias the surveys or to bias the public in the kind of things you may have identified. We'll have the opportunity to test that now because 3 surveys have gone out. That information will come back. You'll get a sense of how important those things are to people and how things are in its current state. How are you doing now, and how important are those in the next 4 years? Concurrent to the session that I held with council, I have met with the senior management team just to get some sense from them on 1 or 2 big issues that they see having a significant positive impact for Fort Erie moving forward. The good news is, and although I'm not sharing what those themes are, there's a lot of commonality between what's been identified already by the town council and senior management and even some of the early community input. So that is very positive and lends itself well to this process as we move forward. So more information to come, but you'll see how things are starting to shape up as we go forward. So this is the revised plan. Essentially, we've taken the one off the end. Concurrently, we'll do phase 2 and 2B all at the same time. That will all come back. The surveys have been launched. We'll leave the surveys out till about March the 8th. We'll have an opportunity then to decide, do we have enough surveys for a valid sample for us to feel comfortable to move forward? If not, we can extend the survey. If we didn't get a lot of surveys, but we got a lot of good quality feedback in the surveys, we may be okay to move forward. So we can make that decision on the 8th. I'm happy to say that before I left to come to the meeting tonight, the surveys had been launched and there were 3 completed. And when I sat down just before I came in the meeting here, there's been 50. So we're getting a lot of early uptake. I want to thank communications staff, CAO's office, and IT for being very responsive to get the information out early today. And so far so good, and we're getting hopefully some really good feedback. In terms of inserting some additional public consultation, when we initially talked, we were aiming for around the end of March, early April, to start to reassemble and have those workshops. That isn't substantially changed. It's maybe pushed out a little bit. Has less to do with that change. It has more to do with a number of surveys that have gone out to the community. We didn't want survey fatigue, survey confusion happening, so there have been a number of community surveys that have gone out. So we sort of paused until this week to do that launch. As I mentioned, some good work done by your communications and IT department to get things like this ready to push out. And you'll see this appear on Facebook and Twitter feeds and a number of other areas to direct people to one of those 3 surveys that might be most relevant to them. And in some cases, maybe all 3, if somebody fits into all 3 categories. So the survey audiences, the first one is residents, which will go out an opportunity for anybody to fill out a resident survey. The second one is community partners, really focused around those agencies, groups, recreational associations, where they may have a number of other members who are part of those clubs, and your other government partners. So there's been a push out to the community agencies that were identified in your community guide, for example. So some 95 community agencies have been notified as of today of the survey. So there have been a number of community surveys filled out, I think about 20 so far. And the last one is businesses. And I had an opportunity to reach out to some of the business associations locally, and so far very willing participation to both complete the survey and forward it out to membership. So I've had meetings with the Fort Erie Economic Development and Tourism Corporation, who will be sending information out tomorrow to their business contacts, the industrial group, developers, and a number of other contacts they have. The Greater Fort Erie Chamber of Commerce has agreed to send it out in their WhatsApp Wednesday e-blast to 380 some odd members. So that went out last Wednesday, and they'll repeat the push the next 2 Wednesdays. And the 3 BIAs locally, although I'm still trying to connect with some of them, the Ridgeway BIA was very willing to forward that information along to their membership, along with the community partner survey, because in some cases, one is a better fit than the other. So lots of positive push forward to get the survey information out. The objective of the survey was to be brief. So we're looking at trying to identify those key priorities and some of the emerging themes. There's 6 to 9 questions, depending on which survey you click on, looking at some common municipal priorities. The types of things that you'll see themed in the survey are those things that are common to municipal strategic plans. Some of them were part of what I've identified in your environmental scan as possible issues. Some is a carry forward from your previous strategic plan where there's maybe still things left that will continue forward. And lastly, things that you've identified in the early session in the input that I collected from the last meeting. So it's a bit of an amalgam of all those things. Those are the themes that have been focused on. There is an opportunity for people to identify others if we've missed something. And lastly, there is an opportunity to try and promote some engagement of your community partners and businesses by asking them questions about how they see themselves supporting the town to meet its objectives going forward. So it'll be interesting to see the kind of feedback we get in those surveys. So the launch plan, which I sent in a much bigger form, I've summarized for here, is for all the groups. The survey's been listed on the town's website banner. So when you click on www.forterie.ca, you'll see in the top announcement banner the opportunity to select the surveys and go right to the survey to complete it. It'll be sent out by a number of different communication methods that will go out, and some directly from the survey itself. Printed surveys will be available here at Town Hall and the libraries. So if anybody doesn't have access to a computer or they're not comfortable getting on the kiosk at those locations, they can complete a paper survey, and we'll have those inputted as well. We'll send a notice to your advisory committees. The town has a number of advisory committees, which is a great venue to get public input. They're already a fairly engaged group, and they'll be able to get the information out as well. As I mentioned with the community partners, there's been over 100 emails sent out already to community agencies and partners for broader distribution of the community partner survey. And lastly, the business surveys, which I've explained. So the online surveys are now currently available, as well as the paper ones. As I mentioned, the deadline for completing the surveys will be March the 8th at the end of the day. We'll be able to reassess at that point in time the level of input that we've got, and probably have some opportunity to check out the depth of information we got as well. We're targeting late March for the next meeting of council to sit down and take input. So we'll have a number of points of input. So we'll have the results of the environmental scan that was done. We'll have council's input and the input that you provided in our last meeting, and then input from those 3 individual community surveys. They'll be summarized separately. I believe those audiences will give slightly different information on what they see as important for the strategic plan. That will all feed in, and it'll be council's exercise then to develop what you see to be the priorities for the next 4 years. And that's the summary. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or if there's any details you want me to elaborate on, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McQueen. We're very much looking forward to the results of those surveys. Sounds like you're off to a great start. And you wanted councillors to complete that survey as well, did you not?
Yes, there is an opportunity to complete the survey as well.
That will help us advance our own particular ideas.
But just one.
Is there any limit on the number that we can complete? Are there any members of council that have any questions of Mr. McQueen? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. McQueen. It was a really interesting presentation, and as you were telling us about it, I did go on to the municipality website, and there it was in bright color, so nobody can miss it. I'm just wondering if you can send each of us a link so that we can share it on our social media platforms too.
Yes, absolutely, for sure.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we look forward to seeing you again. Madam Clerk, it just occurred to me that the third delegation is from the Crystal Ridge Community Center, and I should be declaring a conflict with respect to that, since it is closely linked to the Ridgeway Lions Club. So is Councillor Noyes still the acting mayor? So Councillor Noyes, when we get to Delegation C, I'll hand the chair to you if I may. But before we get there, we're at Delegation B, which is Don West, Chair of the Greater Fort Erie Community Hub Task Force, with a report to council about the feasibility study. Good evening, Mr. West.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Our vision is a healthy, inclusive South Coast community. Over the last couple of years, 3 years ago, we started grassroots organizations, individual citizens like Orma Bleeks, for example. Is Orma here today? Sure. Started to identify many needs that were not accessible in that neighborhood. Conversations were started, stopgap measures were initiated, and eventually, early last year, Advancing Crystal Beach, the Beachcombers, and the Native Friendship Center formed a collaboration. We applied for a Trillium grant, thanks to Joan Christensen's skill in writing, and were granted money to have a survey of needs and feasibilities for a community hub, and subsequently the monies to hire an activator. At that point, the town joined the task force and assigned the manager of strategic initiatives to sit with us on our committee. Very helpful. Last year, we contracted the McLean Consulting Group, and Mitch Baird is here today representing them. They set up a website, designed a survey, and it was interesting to hear the previous conversations about survey and the difficulty it is getting it out there and getting people to answer it. Together, we convinced 785 citizens to respond to a survey that took 7 to 10 minutes to complete. And for the greater part of it, those people actually took the initiative to go to their computer, open the site, and do it. So I'm very proud of the effort that was made to get that many people across the whole city, the whole town, not just Crystal Beach and Ridgeway, do that survey. The consultants also looked at similar projects and models throughout Ontario, different towns, and visited possible sites for us to have a hub. This month, that report was submitted, and as of this morning, now that we have it proofread, it is live at the gfehub.ca. A 150-page report is a read. So we took the time as committee members and created a 12-page abridged version, and that is also available, and you will have it today as hard copy. What have I got here? What is a hub? A community hub is a general term that describes a single point of access for the people and arranges for the collaboration of organizations. A single point for the people, collaboration for organizations. That's a recipe for efficiency. Hubs create efficiency, sharing resources, building awareness, and finding opportunities. Hubs improve community life. So what did the survey say? The first #1 issue was we need doctors. We need family doctors, especially in the West End. There isn't anybody. Or they're leaving. We need doctors. Well, isn't it wonderful? Coinciding with our study, the town has announced new primary care clinics and new family doctors. Kudos to council and to the Community Healthcare Centre, eh? Thank you. Good job. But there are two other categories of needs: activities and services. In the activities, people are asking for more community meeting space. We visited the Lang Hub in Cambridge just on Friday. They receive an average of 3 requests a week for meeting spaces. Different sizes, different functions, 3 requests a week. We are looking for a larger senior center that includes recreation and support services. We have the Beachcombers, but it's inadequate. The community also is looking for a youth center that includes recreation and support services. Now, isn't that interesting? It's a parallel. There comes a recipe for efficiency. I can see it coming, can't you? A gymnasium fits right in there. Arts and culture. We do have an arts and culture community here in various groups, but it's tough sledding for those groups because there is no central organization collaborating together. Education and training, and newcomer orientation. I think we probably have about, what would you say, 600, 700, 800 newcomers per year to this town? What with turnover and new housing? That's a wild guess, but it's probably something like 2 people a day coming into this town for the first time. In terms of services, we do have clothing and food banks, but it's not enough. Mental health services and substance abuse counseling were requested frequently, especially by the younger generation and the older group. And that surprised me. I was quite personally surprised at how many were requesting that. It was a large number, 30% or so. When we were in Cambridge, I asked the director of the hub there, I found this very surprising. He says, oh no, it's not surprising. Those are some of our heaviest used programs. Mental health and substance abuse. looking for a legal clinic, daycare, both child and as respite for daycare for home caregivers, and government services. And the consultants pointed out that from what they were observing and talking to people and so on, that what people often wanted was what would amount to a receptionist who knew where to go, how to do it, who to talk to, because there's an awful lot of government phone numbers and contacts. Where can we put this? Where should it go? Well, the survey says the priority is in the West End. And if you go to the full page report, the full report on the website, you will see a fair explanation of why that is so. It isn't just people's opinions. It's the geographical study of available services. What did we conclude? There is need for a community hub in the West End. 2 sites in the public domain could be considered. The Crystal Ridge site, with its existing facilities. The high school, with its 15 acres. We are looking for a 17 to 20,000 square foot building. The one we visited in Cambridge, a larger city than ours, 168,000 square feet. And it's busy. Unbelievable. And of course, there are probably some private sites available also, but these days private sites can be very, very expensive. For the next 2 or 3 years, our mission is build a space, promote efficiency, create social cohesion. Oh my goodness, there's an awful lot of non-cohesion in the world today. We want social cohesion here in Fort Erie, please. What's next? We have finished the survey. You have the results. Now we are looking to contract the community activator, that person who will identify collaborative opportunities, establish a network of service providers, establish a culture of collaboration. Collaboration doesn't just happen. It has to be encouraged and managed. And there's a treatment discussion of that in the report. We need a clearer understanding specifically of the space and resources needed once we know who the providers and collaborators will be. We need to work on the final site selection. And we already have the Trillium grant to do this. But Joan has started to apply for the GROW grant, which would take it to the next phase, through the next phase of architecture, engineering, legal, and so on. And in conclusion, we need to do a governance model. Who owns it? Who operates it? Who runs it? That's addressed in the report. Site selection we mentioned. The business plan will come toward the end. And a funding plan, of course, is critical. One of the interesting parts of the Cambridge visit we saw was that the city was a tenant. They put up a chunk of capital in exchange for free rent for a huge number of years, and all they did was pay the overhead monthly charges. So that was that worked out well for them. They put in about 10% of the total cost, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. West. And I want to commend you and all the members of your committee and the individuals associated with it, as well as the consultant for the fine work that you've done so far.
Thank you.
I know it's a lot of time and energy that a number of you have put in, and we're truly appreciative of that. I just had a couple of questions. You mentioned the website, the reports on the website. What's the website again?
GFE, Greater Fort Erie, GFE Hub, all one word, gfehub.ca.
Okay, and did you say that you have the funds to hire an active?
We have them on hand from the original grant. It was a two-phase grant from Trillium. One we've spent on the survey, the next will be to hire the activator, and that would be a 7 to 10 month program there. And we have several interesting candidates who have applied to do that job with us. And I say with us, not for us.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any members of council that have any questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Riddick, to the speaker. Thank you for your presentation and for your enthusiasm on this project. I'm just wondering, have you had an opportunity, or members of your group have an opportunity of visiting the Welland Senior Citizens?
Envy? Welland? Thorold? Thorold.
Welland has an interesting one. It's, I think, off of Lincoln Street, and it's
Okay.
it has a lot of what you're talking about. I think a lot of services offered there, and I was quite impressed how extensive the different.
It's wonderful what these hubs can do, and every one is different.
And when the few times that I was in the Welland Senior Citizens thing, it was so busy. And I think they also took the, if I'm not mistaken, part of the town recreational part is they occupy a space in the Welland Senior, if my mind is.
There's collaboration right there.
They look like that. And one further question. Many years ago, and I'm talking 2 decades, so it's probably old news, but Uncle Sam's Plaza tried something similar to that approach. They allowed, they provided like secretarial service, and different organizations. I know the Children's Center occupied 1 or 2 rooms. I think a tax person occupied one of the rooms. There was different services provided up there. And the people would use the same secretarial, like for phone calls and stuff, to decrease the overhead. Unfortunately, that wasn't, I don't know what happened to it, but it lasted about 2 or 3 years. I think it helped those who used the services, but it wasn't well used, I guess. Or maybe Uncle Sam needed the space for something else. But that was an example, and again, but it did meet some of the people's needs. So I do encourage that we continue to follow that, because I do feel that accessing services is very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't you agree?
Absolutely.
See, Mr. West, she's supposed to ask a question, not make a statement when you're up here. Are there any other, she's learning, but it's taking a long time. Are there any other questions by members of council? Councilor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. That was a great presentation. I have a couple of questions for you, though. With respect to the 2 sites, Crystal Ridge and Secondary School, was there one that edged over the other?
Not at this point. They each have interesting things about them. The high school site offers kind of an opportunity to do some creative ownership, sharing, and you can talk about that for a week, the possibilities there. On the other hand, at the Crystal Ridge site, there are already facilities in place that could be used and associated with. So, at this point, no. I'm sure my committee members might have personal opinions. Mine is no.
Thank you. And who are you looking for in terms of funding partners? What type of funding partners?
We haven't got that far yet.
You haven't gotten that far yet?
No.
And is that what this contracted person will be looking at then?
Their first job is to find the collaborators, the service providers, all those associations and agencies who might want to come together. That's job one. Inevitably, you're looking and have your ears open and eyes open, looking for funding. But would be kind of the stage 1.5, as it were.
I'm going to be interested in reading that report, but I'm going to take it away on vacation because I think it's going to take me a week to do that. But I did want to ask you, do you think that it would be a responsibility of the municipality to take it over and have all of the partners that had started the movement part of this in order for it to get going?
That's a possibility.
Okay. Or do you believe that it should be then just...
There are a number of governance scenarios, They are described in the report, and at this point in time, as a committee, we don't have an opinion yet because we haven't really studied that issue. We are finding out what other hubs are doing. The big one that we just visited was a volunteer board of directors with major tenants and a director. And the city was a 19% tenant.
Thank you. I just want to say one thing then, and I want to first of all acknowledge Orma for persevering and getting it on everybody's radar, and then to thank everybody for jumping in and collaborating and getting this done, because I think Fort Erie does need this, and kudos to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Any other councillors before I go back to Councillor Noyes? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Reddecup, to the presenter. Councillor Butler twigged some questions I may have. Would you try to coordinate some of the services with the services that are already offered by the region, because they do have mental health
Sure.
services?
Absolutely.
And so they may actually be a partner
Yeah.
in the building.
Yeah.
And the same thing like the Niagara Peninsula Children's Center or the Rehab Center.
Yeah,
they would bring the services here.
The whole possibility is open. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. West. We appreciate your time and energy, and those of your colleagues. Councillor Noyes, I'm going to hand the chair over to you because the next delegation is Mr. Edward Feiertag.
The next delegation is Mr. Edward Feiertag, Secretary for the Crystal Ridge Community Center. Request for funding for the center.
Mayor Reddecup, ladies and gentlemen of council, members of staff and guests, my name is Edward Feiertag. I live at 4040 Far Avenue in Ridgeway, and I'm Secretary of the Crystal Ridge Community Center. As you may well be aware, this is our 22nd year of service in Fort Erie. In 1993, the Ridgeway Lions Club had outgrown its hall on Prospect Point Road North and decided to pursue the construction of a new hall attached to the West End Arena, now known as the Crystal Ridge Arena, which was also largely funded by the Ridgeway Lions Club. The Crystal Ridge Community Center Corporation was formed and issued its first registered charter information return on March the 19th, 97. In the meantime, Perano and Raimondo Associates were retained. The present community center is evidence of our successful project that we are all very proud of. What is the Crystal Ridge Community Center? The CRCC is a not-for-profit charitable corporation operated by community groups. It leases the community center next to Crystal Ridge Arena at 99 Ridge Road South in Crystal Beach. The center was originally built and donated by the Ridgeway Lions Club in an agreement reached with the town in 1997. The majority of the board is represented by Ridgeway Lions. The remainder of the board consists of members from other community groups, such as the Ridgeway Lioness and Task, that pay an annual membership covered by the Ridgeway Lions. The CRCC is now estimated to have over 120,000 uses per year by the community. We define use as one person attending the CRCC for an event. Operating the CRCC, the hall is operated as close to break-even as possible. Any community group can become a member. Members' annual membership fees allow weekly use of the director's room or main hall. Members also receive a storage area for their equipment. Members are expected to send representatives to the Crystal Ridge Board. Other users pay a rental charge set and reviewed annually by the board. It is the objective of the board to maximize hall use by charging user reasonable fees that will help cover operating costs. In the past, where there have been operating deficiencies, they have been covered through loans by the Ridgeway Lions. The present amount is $97,591. The Ridgeway Lions and Lioness have approximately 6,500 volunteer hours involved in the operation and care of the hall annually. Investment in Fort Erie by community center user groups, fostering more active lifestyles, ball hockey league involving 400 plus children and young adults weekly, the Ridgeway Lioness twice weekly yoga classes, now down the rabbit hole, child and young adults use of stage and hall facilities weekly, which is the performing arts, building inclusive and engaged communities together, rental to TSC. Task, introduce a program in the performing arts that gives handicapped individuals an opportunity to embrace creative and express themselves freely. Task believes in communal support, oriented programs that encourage individuals to interact socially, which will turn enhance friendship and instill awareness. The underlying idea of their organizations that the therapy is effective, isolation is ineffective. In fact, the sense of belonging to a community where members share interests, skills, and passions have proven to help people with disabilities develop lasting, nurturing relationships. Task programs provide an environment in which children and adults will find the resources needed to grow socially and intellectually without ever being held back. Seniors' dinners held at the hall to promote socialization and interaction. Christmas dinners for those in need held by the Ridgeway Lions, community churches, and the Friends of Crystal Beach to support the needs of residents of Fort Erie. The CRC rental for local, provincial, and federal elections. Encouraging people to sustain healthy and sustainable environment. We host Red Cross blood clinics at the hall, flu shot clinics, Canada Revenue Agency rentals for employee training and testing, and enriching people's lives through arts and culture and heritage. Fashion show by the Lioness, trivia events, graduation events for local schools, providing a local center to rent for weddings and social occasions with liquor licensing Ontario law, renting by multiple entertainment uses to... This is me, I'm sorry. Again. Providing local centers to rent for weddings and special occasions with liquor licensing under the Ontario law, renting by multiple entertainment uses for shows to the public, community pasta, fish, roast beef, and chicken dinners held to benefit the community, supporting positive development of children and youth, use of hall by Fort Erie sports leagues, fundraising activities by Lions and Lioness, stage presentation by Task Niagara and Down the Rabbit Hole group, enhancing people's economic well-being, donations of food for the needy collected at the hall, leases to large funeral receptions, rentals to help stimulate the local economy, trade, vendor shows, motorcycle show, Christmas show by the Lioness. In the meantime, our expenses have increased substantially over the years, such as water, $1,785, gas, $2,813, electricity, $3,067, telephone, $1,018, office supplies, $1,598, repairs and maintenance, $13,931, insurance, $4,271, advertising, $2,226, and contractors that we employ, $33,296. for a total of $64,005. Therefore, we are requesting a grant of $25,000 again from the town of Fort Erie to continue our services to the community for this year. Thank you very much for allowing us this time, and I'd like to point out that I have some supporters available here this evening. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Fartag. Any councils have any questions? I have one. Could you elaborate a little bit on the $33,000?
The hall manager, the contractors that we have do the cooking for wedding events and such.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Lubert?
Thank you very much.
Now turn the chair back to Mayor Redicott.
Thank you very much, Councillor Noyes. That takes us to the final delegation. That's Barbara Vanderhayden and Jessica Trapani from the Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship. Good evening, members of Council, Mayor Redicott, Town of Fort Erie staff, community members. I am Barb Vanderhayden, Executive Director of Big Brothers Big Sisters of South Niagara, and joining me this evening is our new Fundraising and Events Coordinator, Jessica Trapani, who will speak to you shortly. We thank you for allowing us the time to speak to you briefly tonight regarding our 2019 Bowl for Kids' Sake campaign. Our agency's campaign starts this Saturday in Welland and runs through until the wrap-up, which is actually Saturday, March 23rd at Fort Erie at Carroll's Bowling Lane. In between those times, we are also doing a corporate bowl as well as several school campaigns. Big Brothers Big Sisters of South Niagara has been providing service to children within our service area since April 1964. In 2018, we provided service to 607 children, of which 109 were Fort Erie communities, plus an additional 28 children in Fort Erie communities that are on the wait list, waiting for their Forever Big. Our free mentoring programs are either community-based or site-based. Community-based is our most popular and well-known, which is the traditional one-to-one, as well as our Big for a Day program, which is a program where staff offer a once-a-month outing for children that are on the wait list to keep them engaged with the organization as well as the extra activities. Our site programs include the one-to-one matches, which is the same as the traditional, except it runs through the school year, 1 hour a week for each child. Our site-based is our Go Girls and Game On program, as well as our Stepping Stones and After School program, which we run at the school's request within the communities. And I'm very excited to announce that thanks to a grant we received recently, we are starting a new program through a partnership with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Niagara Falls and Strive Niagara to offer a Young Mums program. And that program will match a young mom with, in most cases, a professional woman to assist them with orientation and all the challenges through their life while they're most likely continuing school, making adjustments, and having to deal with a lot of other emotional and issues that aren't necessarily common to the average person. So we're very excited to be partnering on this, and we anticipate that Fort Erie definitely will be one of the communities that we will be moving this program to. I know you've all heard from me many times saying that we have no secure funding for our mentoring programs. This year, again, we need to raise over $307,000 in order to continue the programming for this year. And all other monies are achieved through donors, corporate sponsorships, grants, annual third-party fundraising, as well as our Bowl for Kids' Sake, which you can obviously is a really important event for us to enable the continuation of the programs we offer. We are here tonight to ask for your assistance again this year in achieving our goal by supporting our Bowl for Kids' Sake event through collecting pledges, sponsorship, and/or donating. With everyone doing a little bit, we know this can be achieved. Jessica, would you please offer the details of this year's campaign?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Redekop and Council. Thank you, Mayor Redekop, for getting my last name correct. Barb, just kidding. I'm very excited to be here for my first time to share with you the exciting details about this Tim Hortons Bowl for Kids' Sake campaign. Records show that this council and your communities have always played a significant role in the success of our campaign. How can you help us to ensure that the matches within Fort Erie communities can continue? By gathering a team of 4 to 6 bowlers and registering a team either online or by calling me at the office. Have your team gather a minimum of $200 in pledges, which is about $50 per player. In order for everyone to have some fun while bowling and celebrate what you're passionate about, we selected Fandemonium as our theme. So what does that mean? That means to come dressed in an outfit that reflects whatever you're a fan of. So whether that's a specific team or sport or cheeseburgers or even a Tim Hortons Timbit, you let us know what you're a fan of by wearing something that reflects it. There isn't an easier way to help young children within your community receive free mentorship programs while having lots of fun at the same time. Did I mention that there's also lots of prizes for best dressed team as well as your spirit? There's also incentives for team pledges, different levels that are achievable. We secured a $750 Via Rail certificate, which each player can have their name entered into for the chance to win for every $100 that they raise. Another way is to sponsor somebody already bowling or just make a direct donation. You can call me to book your desired bowl time for your bowl date on March the 23rd at Carroll's Bowling Lanes. The times are either 4:30 or 7. I look forward to hearing from all of you.
In closing, a reminder of Tim Hortons Bowl for Kids' Sake Mayor's Trophy. It's up for grabs again this year, so help your mayor and council bring it back to the town of Fort Erie by participating and pledging. It's currently sitting in the town of Pelham. We encourage Mayor Redekop, council, staff, and families of the town of Fort Erie to join us Saturday, March 23rd to ensure that the trophy comes back to your town. Have some fun by dressing up as what you are a fan of and possibly winning a prize for your costume. Help us provide mentoring programs to the children living within the greater Fort Erie communities. Thank you for your time, and we are pleased to address any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, ladies. Just like a ruling. So how many teams can we put in? And if we put in more than one team, does all the money go towards the mayor's accumulation in terms of trying to get that trophy back?
I wouldn't say it hasn't happened in the past, Mayor Wayne.
So I think that was a setup last year, so that you can get us back making greater contributions. But thanks very much. I'm definitely going to be there. I'm hoping that I'll have enough counselors, and I'm hoping that we can get some of the staff members as well to come out as well. It's a great time, and it's an excellent cause.
Thank you.
Members of council that have any questions? Thank you very much.
I think it's interesting. The first year Welland won it. You won it for 4 years. Pelham's had it once, so I wouldn't be surprised if it... Jessica does have some registration packages should you need them. Do you want us to maybe just put them
leave them here, they can be circulated.
And they can circulate it. Thank you so much for your time and enjoy your evening.
Thank you, and good luck with this year's bowling fundraiser.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you in your costumes.
For sure. So that completes our delegations, and if there are individuals in the crowd who would like to leave, this would be a good time. Yeah, it is good. Just water to come out. And we'll be just to be there would be worth the price of admission. Okay, so we're back in session, and Councillor McDermott, you have the resolution dealing with the consent agenda items. Are there any items in the consent agenda that anyone would like removed to be dealt with separately? And Madam Clerk, there was a modification to the minutes of the February 11th regular council meeting that have been completed. Okay, and that's simply related to this misspelling of one of the individuals' names. Okay, if there aren't any items to be removed, Councillor McDermott, would you please move forward with your resolution?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Duvenel, that Council approves the consent agenda items as recommended.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. That then takes us to new business and inquiries, and the first resolution I have relates to an appointment to the Ridgeway BIA, and Councillor Butler, you have that resolution.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubenau that Council appoints Sarah Chevalier to the Ridgeway Business Improvement Area Board of Management for the period ending November 14th, 2022.
Are there any questions or comments with respect to that resolution? All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. Are there any inquiries or items of new business that any members wish to bring forward? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I'm just wondering if copies of the various consultant reports regarding the Kinsman Pool can be provided to council. I know there's been a few over the years. I would like a copy, and I would imagine perhaps other councillors would like a copy.
Who would have those? Would that be Mr. Walsh? Mr. Brady?
I believe Ms. Hanson has most of those. Do you want copies of the ones that was done the last time? Is that what you're looking for?
If I may, I think that there's been 3 done over the last.
Why don't we do this? Whatever reports are available, maybe they can be scanned and emailed to any councillors that wish them, and that will accommodate Councillor Noyes. Any other inquiries? Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just wondering, Mr. Firetag was just up here requesting that another grant for $25,000, and I'm just wondering, is that in our supplementary request in our budgets, or is that something that we need to request staff to add?
So I'm going to refer this to Mr. Cookett, and I'm going to hand the chair to Councillor Noyes to deal with this item.
Mr. Cookett?
Through your chair to the councillor, presently that request is not part of our budget. We would need council to make that recommendation so that we would include it, and then we can review it at the time of budget presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Maybe we need to get some clarification from the clerk on how we go about. Do I make the suggestion, and maybe I need a seconder tonight? Can we do that tonight?
I'm not sure. I think you need a notice of motion would be tonight.
Would we?
That it be put towards the, put in the budget, but I think you would need a notice of motion.
Would we?
No.
I'm looking at our clerk. Do we need a notice of motion for that?
Yes, Chair. In this instance, because it relates to the budget, we don't need notice of motion for that. Generally, what happens is that staff is directed at a council meeting, and the treasurer will include it.
You don't need
If
to.
has anything he'd like to add, he can step in.
So I guess the answer to your question, thank you for that explanation. The answer to your question is that yes, you can make a motion.
I can bring a request forward that we include
in the supplemental budget, I think.
$25,000 for the Crystal Ridge Community Center in our supplementary budget.
Okay, I think
Do I need a seconder?
Yes, and that motion is now on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Counselor, you have a seconder. Counselor Butler has seconded. I think it's now on the floor for comment and consideration.
Yes, can I?
And at this, okay, Counselor Lupertz, do you want to address
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Looking at, over the years, this has been a request by the community center, and it's always, to my knowledge anyway, been granted. So I'm hoping that council will consider it and agree to consider it in our budget.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions from any of the councillors? Seeing none, all those in favor? It carries. Thank you. I now turn the chair back.
Thank you
Mayor
very much,
Redekop.
Councillor Noyes. Councillor, sure, go ahead, Councillor.
If I may continue. With our report from our regional councillor, he spoke about affordable housing, and that the organization that handles that says that if there was more properties available for this type of housing, that things would move faster in Fort Erie. And I'm just wondering if the regional councillor would need a list of properties, and maybe our staff could provide a list of properties that's available in the town of Fort Erie that would accommodate some affordable housing. Now, I know for one, when we did the Stevensville plan, there was some rezoning of property that would accommodate a seniors living building. And I'm just wondering if that might be a site that regional housing might want to consider for affordable housing as well. But if that's what they're looking for, I think we should provide them with a list of properties that's available here in Fort Erie. I'm sure we have some.
Councillor Encina, can you enlighten us at all?
Thank you, Your Worship. What we're planning to do is to actually develop a land inventory, and what I will be doing is coming to the mayors and all the CAOs, and that's really it. If there is some way that we can come into some type of an agreement, whether it be through Niagara Regional Housing and the town or city, if we can, whatever it takes, whether it be a lease program or whether it be a granted land or whatever, those are the discussions that we're actually going to go out and have for right now. And yes, there are people who are ready to step forward and to develop, but that's kind of where we're at right now. And I think that's where we're going to develop that. We're at the initial stage right now. And that was part of our letter and part of my pitch that I was going to go out to the communities and say, if there is anything that is available, how can we make this work?
So in anticipation of those meetings taking place, town staff should put together a list of potential sites.
That would save us a lot of time, and that would be very much appreciated.
Mr. Cookett, Mr. Brady, perhaps the two of you can collaborate on that.
Could I ask one question to that?
Beg your pardon?
Could I ask one question
Of course,
to that?
of course.
Are you looking for publicly owned sites, or are you looking for privately owned sites that the region would want to acquire?
I think we're actually looking for anything. I'll be quite honestly, whether it be whether we have to purchase the property, or whether we enter into a lease, or whether we enter an agreement with the town. I know they're doing that right now with several other locations. I believe but St. Catharines has joined in to do something like that to address the issue. So whether it is a purchase of private land, or whether it is a grant land, whether going to at least.
Anything further, Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I think it might serve us well if we just give them a list of property that's zoned to accommodate this type of housing, and then we can move from there, right?
They're going to
whether it's
work on.
town-owned or privately owned.
Yeah, they'll put together something, but it would be helpful, I think, if there was some contact with Niagara Regional
Yeah.
Housing, just to make sure that we've got specifics as to what it is exactly they're looking for, and then at least something would be available when you arrive. Okay, anything further?
Yes, just one more thing, just to follow up on a request from Councillor Noyes on the Kingsman Pool and the reports. Last year, I asked and inquired about some data on how the underwater recovery unit made out with their programs with the pool and the swimming and stuff. And I think the reason I asked that was I was curious as to what their plans were. Are they walking away? I think Councillor at the time, Pacero, said that he was managing all that and that he could bring that information forward, but we never received it. So I think that information, if we could get that, and I see Mr. Cookett wants to comment on it, but I'd like to get that information as well.
Mr. Cookett.
Through you, Your Worship, to the councillor. You did make that request a few weeks back, councillor, so we did reach out to the undercover recovery unit and ask for it. They said it would take a couple of weeks for them to compile it and get it to us, so we should have it probably this week or early next week.
Anything further, Councillor Duberts?
No, thank you very much, Mayor Adcock.
I saw Councillor Dubenow's hand up, and then I'm going to go to Councillor Butler, and then I'll go back to Councillor Noyes unless there's someone else that hasn't spoken yet. Councillor Dubenow.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just two things briefly, if I may. I know you had mentioned it earlier, but I just want to extend appreciation again to Mr. Walsh as well as Chief Melanson for the work that they did during the windstorm. I happened to get down to Mather Arch to take a look at the ice pile, and I was comforted by the fact that the firefighters were there actually scurrying people away, if you will, because climbing up that ice pile would potentially be not a very good situation if the ice had shifted. So I just want to mention that again. The second point is I know that there have been some inquiries made recently with regard to information from the Community Gaming Development Corporation. I know that it's good to see that there's some interest for some information from councillors and from the community. I think that's excellent. Just going forward, I think it might be better if the inquiry was presented to either the manager of gaming or perhaps myself as the council representative or even the chair of the gaming board. It's not to say that anything requested recently was not, appropriately handed out. It's just going forward, some information may require board approval. So I think it might be better just to filter those requests through the board. And I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just going back to the conversation previous with respect to the affordable housing, I'm just wondering if a serious consideration can be given to the Ridgeway Secondary School as it accommodates two things. The creation of a community hub, and it has the area to create a vast area for real affordable housing. So I'm hoping that both the municipality here and the CAO and the mayor, along with yourself, regional councillor, can get together and really kind of take that one home.
Anything further? Any other councillors before I go back to Councillor Noyes? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Again, my questions are stemming from some of the other questions in regards to affordable housing. And I think there's a lot of interest, as there should be, on this. And I'm just wondering if it would be appropriate to actually have a representative from Niagara Regional, from Regional Housing to come and make a presentation, because I think there's a lot of interest and a lot of questions that we may have in regards to the thought of how they're planning on moving forward, and also what is the preferred model in regards to the housing and the housing providers. I know that there are different models where, like rent geared to income and market rent. and there's a ratio that they would like in each building and things like that. It's not just as simple as putting up a building. And I know there's also an opportunity for privately owned, already existing buildings that the Niagara Regional Housing can actually rent units for, or put their name down, so that the units within these already existing buildings can then be geared towards affordable housing. And I don't know, I think you, Regional Council in City, I think you may have commented a little bit. I heard on the news very quickly something about Meriton and St. Catharines coming up with, they're going to be moving forward on a building for affordable housing, and it included 4 units for homeless shelters, also service on site. Well, I can't remember which organization, but I don't know if you can fill us in on some of that.
So that would have come under the regional councilor's report, and he mentioned affordable housing. I believe the Niagara Regional Housing Corporation does intend to make a presentation here, but it seems to me that that would likely be after they've had an opportunity to meet with town representatives and get some information. But that's, so I expect that that will occur, and I'm sure Councillor Encina was listening to you in terms of your interest in certain aspects of the housing.
And thank you for that. And my other question is geared on Councillor Dubineau's request that if we have questions for the community gaming, just a heads up, I did actually leave a message for Ms. Gress to call me before that meeting, as I always do. I try to go to the person who wrote the report, and I will continue to do that, but I'm not necessarily going to wait for board approval to ask a question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I believe Councillor Dubineau's point was that you don't have to bring it necessarily through council. You can make the request directly. Any other items of new business or inquiries? If not, then that takes us to the next item, which is motions. And Councillor Dubineau, you have a you have a motion.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. It's a long one. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Butler, that whereas Niagara Regional Council is accountable to the taxpayers of the Regional Municipality of Niagara, which includes taxpayers of the town of Fort Erie, and whereas an investigation by the Auditor General of Ontario identified several areas of concern at the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, including $3.8 million in purchases between 2013 and 2017 that did not adhere to its own policies for the competitive acquisition of goods and services. And whereas the 2018 and 2019 Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority budgets presented to Niagara Regional Council did not provide a full accounting of all spending to the satisfaction of Regional Council, and whereas Niagara Regional Council lacks the authority to approve, reject, or otherwise modify a budget presented by the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, despite Council's accountability to the taxpayers of the region, and whereas voters in the Regional Municipality of Niagara, including the town of Fort Erie, sent a strong message on October 22nd, 2018 for the need for honesty, integrity, accountability, and transparency in the way governance in this region and at the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority is conducted. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Fort Erie hereby requests that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority provide a full and transparent accounting of all spending in its 2018 and 2019 operating and capital budgets to Niagara Regional Council, and to continue to do so for each subsequent year. And further, that the town of Fort Erie requests the provincial government to amend the Conservation Authorities Act to provide municipalities within the watershed of a conservation authority greater oversight over conservation authority budgets, including, but not necessarily limited to, the ability to approve, reject, or modify a budget presented by a conservation authority in any given year, and the ability to withhold funding should a conservation authority fail to provide a full and transparent accounting of its revenues and expenditures as reasonably requested from time to time. And further, that this resolution be sent to the Premier, the Minister of Natural Resources, the members of Provincial Parliament for the Niagara Ridings, the Chair and Clerk of the Regional Municipality of Niagara, the Chair and Secretary of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, and further, that this resolution be sent to the Regional Municipality of Niagara, the local area municipalities in Niagara, the City of Hamilton, and Haldimand County for their endorsement and support.
Councillor Dubineau, do you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, actually, I would like to speak to that. I think it goes without saying that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, and I'll preface this that I'm pleased with the direction things are moving. You know, certainly they've come back with some budget modifications recently, but I think it goes without saying that over the previous 4 years, there's been a lot of concern within the community over how things have been conducted. And just going back to Regional Councillor Encina's report, one of the things that he had mentioned was an overpayment on a debt charge was included in the budget, and it wasn't until Regional Council pushed back that they finally pulled back on that. A forensic audit has been requested. The most stickling thing to me, and it's a shame really, is that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Foundation, and I'm assuming by extension even the MPCA, can't solicit donations for their programs which promote conservation in the community because of this cloud hanging over their head. And I think one of the things that we can do by making this request is to put the accountability back on the officials who were elected to oversee and to watch over taxpayer dollars. And so I'm hoping by putting this forward and getting some discussion on this, that maybe the province will look into it and provide some greater oversight over those budgets. So thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak or comment on the motion? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Ridicop. I'm generally in support of this. I just need some clarification. And Councillor Duveneau and I had a brief conversation just for some clarification, but I just wanted to make sure that the third that from the bottom, where the town of Fort Erie requests the provincial government to amend the Conservation Authorities Act to provide municipalities, when he's referring to municipalities in that, he's referring to Niagara Region, not Fort Erie, Thorold, Welland. Am I correct on that?
Well, it would have to be because it's a regional body and it's the municipality.
Okay, because it says provide municipalities and it's coming from the town. I just wanted a clarification. The other thing, therefore, just looking at it, therefore, it's the town of Fort Erie is asking the government, the provincial government, to allow the regional municipality to have more oversight. Is that basically the gist of it? And the Niagara region is, so we're asking on behalf of the Niagara region, or we're asking on our own behalf to allow the Niagara region to have that increased authority? Is that?
Well, I think Councillor Duveneau can respond to it, but my understanding is that every municipality contributes towards the budget through its taxpayers. But it's the regional municipality here, it's the city of Hamilton, and it's the county of Haldimand, all of which are within the watershed for this particular conservation authority. It's a dog's breakfast across the province, but the municipalities that are doing the levying, and in this case in Niagara, it's the region, should have the ability to influence that budget. That's, I believe, the thrust. Councillor Duveneau, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, thank you, Your Worship. That's exactly the intent, is that we within the town of Fort Erie, acting on behalf of our taxpayers, which are taxpayers to the Niagara region as well, would be requesting that the region have that authority to say, hey, hold up. We have some concerns, we have some questions, we need some more transparency on a budget being presented. And if they come back and say, well, no, you don't have that authority, here's the bill, pay it, that we can say, well, we'll back up a second, we're holding off until we get those answers. So that's the intent of this, is residents within the town of Fort Erie, I believe, are entitled to that oversight at the NPCA, because we as elected officials, regardless of whether it's the town of Fort Erie, city of Port Colborne, or the regional municipality of Niagara, we all act on behalf of taxpayers, and we're the stewards of the taxes that they pay to us. And I think it's very important that we have the ability to request that information and to be able to approve a budget that is being, essentially paid for with taxpayer dollars.
Councillor Noyes.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. I guess I don't know if this is appropriate. I wonder if Regional Councillor Encina could perhaps describe what the current situation is under the Conservation Act that in regards to budget oversight.
Beg your pardon? Councillor Duveneau? Anything further you would like to add?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Anything further?
Well, I didn't get an answer.
What's the question again?
I said, I'm wondering if Regional Councilor Insignia can actually tell us today what the current situation is under the Conservation Authorities Act in regards to providing oversight.
Okay, so Councilor Insignia is here to provide us with his report and to respond to our questions. He's not a member of this council, and I'm not really inclined to have him engaged in the discussions or the inquiries. And the conservation, if you're wanting to know what the authority of levying municipalities is with respect to conservation authorities' budgets, it's none.
Okay, they give you the bill and you give the money.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. That's just wanted to clarify.
Okay. Any other councilors? Councilor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I don't have a problem with supporting the motion, but I just going to caution that even though this is a request from the town of Fort Erie, I don't know that the province isn't going to come back and rule it out of order. This is something that is given the authority to the region. And if anything, what we need to do maybe is request that the region allow us to look at their budget items. And if they're not answering the questions, that the region would get the answers for us. But, I mean, I'll support it, but I don't know that we are here to request things on behalf of the region. And it looks like this is what we're doing here. But I'll support it anyway, but I'm not going to be disappointed when they come back. But I'm sure that the region will stand behind this and or make that request to change the act.
Are there, Councilor Duino, if you'd like to respond to that?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. One of the things I did explicitly include in the motion was to send this to the Niagara region, as well as the city of Hamilton and Haldimand County, which are the, I guess, the municipalities for the purpose of the Conservation Authorities Act, for their endorsement and support. So if they see that the town of Fort Erie is concerned about this, they have the option to receive it, endorse it, and then the we can go from there. I don't think that we're so much as asking the province to grant the town of Fort Erie the right to look at the budget or reject the budget, if you will. I think we're asking on behalf of the town of Fort Erie that they grant the regional municipality of Niagara that right, because when it comes down to it, the taxpayers within the town of Fort Erie that we represent are also taxpayers to the regional municipality of Niagara, and that's why I think it's important that we, despite not being the municipality that funds them directly, that we pick this up and say, we got to do something about this on behalf of our taxpayers.
I wonder if, just to make that clear, as a matter of a friendly amendment, in that paragraph, the end of the second line, that the town of Fort Erie requests the provincial government to amend Conservation Authorities Act to provide, I wonder if it should be responsible municipalities within the watershed. And then I think it maybe provides some clarity that Councillor Noyes maybe was looking for. Okay, so
I'm good with that, Your Worship.
that's
Thank
a
you.
friendly amendment, and your seconder is good with that? Okay, did you get that, Madam Clerk? Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? None opposed, that is carried. Thank you, Councillor Dubineau. That then takes us to notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion this evening? There are none, then that takes us to bylaws. Does anyone wish any of the bylaws removed from the package for separate consideration? If not, then Councillor McDermott, I would ask you to proceed with the reading of the council bylaw package, first and second reading. Resolution number 4.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubineau, that the bylaw package containing 27-2019 to appoint Edward T. McDermott of ADR Chambers Incorporated as Integrity Commissioner for the town of Fort Erie, 28-2019 to authorize the execution of a subdivision agreement with 9136 Canada Limited, Simon Mill and Gary Lau, Black Creek Signature Phase 1. 29-2019 to authorize the execution of an amending subdivision agreement with 1372708 Ontario Incorporated, Von Gibbons, Crystal Ridge Landing. 30-2019 to authorize the execution of an assumption agreement for the Dominion Woods Phase 2 with Mountain View Homes, Niagara Limited, Mark Basquiano, and Niagara South Vacant Land Condominium Corporation number 141. 31-2019 to rename a portion of Cherrywood Avenue North to Elizabeth Road. 32-2019 to amend the Management, Supervisory, and Exempt Employees Salary Administration Plan by law number 54-2017. 33-2019 to appoint Kevin Hess as a Fire Prevention Officer, Fire Prevention Inspector, and Municipal Law Enforcement Officer for the town of Fort Erie. And 34-2019 to appoint Caleb Storing as Building Inspector for the Corporation of the Town of Fort Erie, and to repeal bylaw number 45-20.
The second page. Oh. Continue on. Your work is not yet done, Councillor McDermott.
35-2019 to authorize the entry into a road maintenance agreement for Lap Road and Shabo Road with the Corporation of the City of Niagara Falls. 36-2019 to authorize the entry into a traffic signal agreement the Regional Municipality of Niagara is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That bylaw package is on the floor for questions or comments. Councillor Dubineau.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I just want to thank the clerk for not giving me the long bylaw package to read tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay, that then takes us to third and final reading, and Councillor Noyes, you have that resolution.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubineau that bylaw numbers 27, 2019, 28, 2019, 29, 2019, 30, 2019, 31, 2019, 32, 2019, 33, 2019, 34, 2019, 35, 2019 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
So, Madam Clerk, bylaw 36 isn't in that, but it should be, I presume. Or is there a reason why it wouldn't be? That's the bylaw with respect to the agreement with the... Could you add number 36, 2019, please?
And 36, 2019 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Dubineau, you have the next resolution.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, that bylaw number 37-2019 to confirm the actions of council at its council and committee meeting held on February 19th, 2019, and council meeting held on February 25th, 2019 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Butler, third and final reading.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubineau, that bylaw number 37-2019 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal. Are
there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That takes us to scheduling of meetings. Meetings this week? Councillor Noyes, then Councillor Dubineau.
Yes, there's a traffic coordinators meeting on Wednesday, the 27th at noon. There's also on the same day, but at 6 o'clock, the roundtable short-term rentals that evening, which is also the 27th. And I think, is there not a planning and development meeting at 4 o'clock on that same day? Thank you.
Any other meetings? Or, sorry, Councillor Dubineau.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Community Gaming Development Corporation will be having its meeting on Wednesday, February 27th at 5:30 p.m. We have relocated to conference room number 2 for the evening. Just a heads up in case anyone thought it was in conference room 1.
Did you say that was the 27th as well?
Yes.
Okay, any other meetings? Then that takes us to the final resolution, and Councillor Luberts, I think you have it.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that council adjourns at 7:45 p.m. to reconvene into a special meeting of council on March 18th, 2019.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.